Good morning. It's Monday morning, and clearly it's Monday morning. I lost my internet about 5 minutes before we came on, and we've had some speaker problems and all kinds of other issues. Hopefully, we've had our glitch for the mission. This is ASMM Digital Small Business Connections. I'm Ann Brennan. I'm the owner of ASMM Digital Marketing, and we are the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Our goal is to give you information you can put to work for your business today. And we speak with entrepreneurs all over the world to help you learn things that maybe you wouldn't know on your own. Maybe not even reading a lot of books, because a lot of entrepreneurs are busy. They don't have time to go out and write a book every time they've learned a new lesson. So that's what we're here for. We're on episode 68 and we're streaming live. I tell you this every time because we're streaming live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Sorry, forgot the third one. We're looking to stream live on Instagram shortly and hopefully LinkedIn. But right now, that's where we are: YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. The reason I tell you this is because you can leave us messages and you can ask us questions. And when you do that, we can answer them live right here. So there's no better time to get information. If you have a question, if you have a point, if you have something you want to share with us, we want to hear it. So please do ask us questions. That's important. All right. Today we have Carter Wilcoxson from CSI Financial Group. And I have to be honest with you, we're going to pull him up and I'll tell him this right there. I get nervous every time I get somebody who says, "Oh, I'm in financial advising." And I get nervous because I think, "Oh, this is going to be boring." But your talking points are so great. And I'm so excited about talking to you. So tell us, first of all, a little bit about what you do and why you know so much about helping entrepreneurs.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show today. And it is Monday. It's early, 7 o'clock here in Pacific time. I guess it's Phoenix, Arizona, so we don't change our clocks. That's a little bit of inside information for some that may be listening. We're one of, I think, maybe two places in the world that don't change our clocks ever, so it's always the same time. That's a sidebar. But CSI Financial Group and myself, we formed about 6 years ago, and it was really with the purpose of going on this journey to help to recreate the space that we're in. It's very unique. It's a niche space that a lot of people don't even know. And I consider myself and our team really advisors to advisors. So we help to implement and incorporate a proprietary process that we've refined and developed over the last 3 years, where we use estate planning as a foundational approach. And the reason why we went this route is because we learned that there's so much mystery when it comes to the terminology estate planning, but it's actually very simple. And I can get into that a little bit more later on, but it's been an amazing journey, and we went out on this journey to do 3 things better than anybody else, and then I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah.
We wanted to, number one, start and begin with the client experience and elevate that to a level that they've never been through before. When I say the client, I'm talking end users throughout the United States, millions of people that really need what it is that we can provide. Number two, help to create what I call professional contrast. You've heard the terminology, what makes you different? What's your differentiator?
Right.
We call it professional contrast. Then number three, ultimately, if you follow our process properly, you will competitor proof your most ideal clients. So that's really what we set out to do. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years now.
Well, awesome. And one of the things, when I look for it every time, what's interesting, right? You're going to give me talking points. And people will say, well, why do I have to give you talking points? Well, because that way I know whether I actually want to talk to you and whether you have something to offer my audience, right? You gave us great talking points. The first one thing you said, I want to talk about multi-disciplinary and disciplinary networking. And I love networking. So I'm very curious about this. What is it and why use it in your business?
Yeah, I wrote an article on LinkedIn that the title was "Always Listen to Your Customer." So here's the thing: financial planning, financial services. It's almost esoteric, if you will, and everybody is being bombarded with, "Oh, let me help you manage your money" or whatever. The multidisciplinary team approach is really a way that we take all of these different facets of estate and financial planning. We bring it all underneath one roof, but the key client of ours are independent financial advisors. And all too often, what's happened in this space is that typically in this area of specialty, it's normally had to been outsourced to somebody who doesn't have the same agenda, the communication, the collaboration, the access really isn't there. So the multidisciplinary team approach is really bringing a team of specialists together all under one roof, where we put the advisor right in the center as the quarterback, and then the team that we bring together for them to help with the implementation and the specialties that are going to be needed for proper planning, whether it's estate or financial. The advisor is always the quarterback and in charge of a team that surrounds them, that we bring to them, that have a vested interest in their success, as opposed to typically it's the other way around when it comes to this level of planning for end user clients.
Right. Well, and so a lot of times when we do this, one of the things that we have to do is say, so how does this apply to other people? But it's funny that this is the topic, because I just joined, about BNI?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I joined a BNI. I've been in it for a while, but I've been in this new one since March, because we moved I guess April. We moved April 30th to a new area. And we did. I joined this group. And it is very different than any group I've ever been in, because they use the same approach. We have 8 members of the marketing team. There are 8 members on our marketing power team. And people are like, but you guys all do the same thing. But together we don't. Together we work together to give the very best end experience to our clients. So I focus solely on social media within this group. That's all I do. Even though I can build websites, even though I can do newsletters and all of these other things, I only do social media. And there's somebody for all of the other areas. And we work together in a way that's so wonderful for the client, because we can help them so much more together than any of us could do on our own. So it is important. So that's how you use it. How can you team up with other people to make your business stronger?
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I've had so many advisors, and I'll use that word loosely from time to time, because I'll work with an independent financial advisor who is securities licensed, and I'll work with insurance license only. And there's no one's not better than the other. It's just that the terminology advisor gets thrown around, as well as producer, agent, whatever you want to call it. What I discovered is that a lot of times, in most instances, a lot of these independent financial advisors are out there sort of going it alone. They don't have a team. They have maybe an admin, maybe 2 admin. There might be a junior, but that's a rarity in and of itself. A lot of times they have executive suites, or they work out of their home. So I just realized what we really need to do in order to have this be a win-win for everybody, especially starting with the end user client, first and foremost, is to bring together this collaborative effort. And I've been a collaborative fan for way before collaboration was, a trending word.
Right.
I think collaboration is absolutely key. And the problem is most times people are like, well, my success depends on you failing. And it couldn't be further from the truth. We can all succeed together if we are of the mindset that the rising tide lifts all ships, that old adage. So,
yeah.
So that was my whole purpose, is to bring something to market that's really never been there. But it's amazing to me when I talk to a new advisor, someone I've never spoke to before, and I share with them the things that we're talking about here today. They could have been in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years, and their minds are just blown. They're just like, wait, what? I mean, I can take somebody who's a one-man show, and literally within 7 to 14 business days, with all the tools that we bring to the table, there's a barrier to entry a little bit, and there's some skin in the game that needs to be, but it's very cost effective. But I can take them from looking like a one-man or one-woman show, and I can make them look much bigger than they are literally almost overnight.
Absolutely. It's bringing me back. I think we talked about this. You haven't really watched the podcast, but when we first started this, one of the first things we did is we pulled together Mojo Creative, which is just down the road from me, and Hawk Marketing, which is just down the road from me. And we're on paper, we are competitors. That's what we are. But when COVID started, we knew there's so many small businesses here that they were afraid and they needed to know what they could do. What do you do next? Right.
Yep.
And so we started doing this whole series of podcasts and things where we'd get together and do webinars. And we did it knowing that, yeah, maybe we're competitors, but we also can help each other. And the amount of business that has come from that collaboration, that willingness to work together, willingness to say, hey, this isn't really what I'm great at, but this is what he is. And this one's doing this over here. And this is what I'm great at. And let's do everything together. It makes a huge difference if you can find people within your own industry and start collaborating with them in a positive way. So I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, well, and let me just touch on that just a little bit, because here's the thing that I have definitely known for almost 20 years in this space. Independent financial advisors are actually really, really great at one key discipline, if you will, and that's relationship building. I knew that they didn't want to have to do all of this other, ancillary work or, paper pushers. That's not what they are. What they are is they're relationship builders. They want to just be able to share and communicate with their prospects and their clientele that they're looking to acquire, and leave the rest up to somebody else. So I knew that inherently. So that's what I did. I just went out and I said, hey, you need to know a little bit, but you don't need to know everything that it is. You can learn as much as you want along the way, but you are not going to be required to know all of these things that, typically speaking, advisors are either afraid to get into or think that they can't. Right. So I said, hey, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to learn everything. You just have to know what everybody else does and understand that we are here to make you successful, and that client experience is going to make you look even better, which ultimately, and everybody knows this, a referral, or what I call an introduction, that's what this leads to a lot of times. So leveraging and multiplying your client acquisition in this, if you follow the steps that we've created for you, that will lead to more introductions, which those become even faster, quicker ways to monetize those relationships. So that I couldn't have said that any better, and not making these, individual advisors, producers, male or female, help them understand that they don't have to know everything, but we've got a team that surrounds you that can give you as much help and support along the way as you need. And there's really just a little bit of you to do so that you can go out, do what you do best, which is really cultivate and create these relationships.
Absolutely. I think that you said that so well. I love it. All right, let's go to the secret to being I loved this, your client's hero. So how can you become your client's hero?
Well, I'll tell you, and again, this is something I've been a huge fan of early on, and it's through education. We have this proprietary process, as I've mentioned before, where it all starts with estate planning. And the terminology of estate planning has really been misconstrued for a very, very long time. So we have these educational events that we're actually completely doing all online now. Because first of all, everything we do can be done online prior to COVID. So it wasn't like we had to figure something out. We did have to try to figure out how we could recreate educating the end user client, which we have streamlined that beautifully, by the way. But being your client's hero is sharing something with them that they have a conventional wisdom on or think it's one thing. But when we educate them and show them it's actually something completely different, their jaws drop like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. So we educate them and help to demystify what estate planning really is and why it's so imperative for once the inevitable happens for all of us and you're gone, we have proactively put together something that will help you to be remembered in a more favorable way, as opposed to the things I've had to deal with in my own family, my wife's own family, what I call fracturing of families that happen a lot of times when the matriarch or the patriarch pass away. Crazy things start happening when money starts being dispersed, and if things haven't been set up properly, then how you become remembered may not be in a very favorable light, or the family that's left behind becomes fractured, and then you lose connection with them, and we should never do that. So being your client's hero is to proactively set them up for success, now and into the future and even beyond. So that's what I talk about, being your client's hero, simply by educating them on something that for all too often they have not had access, nor did they have an idea of what it really meant.
Well, and I think, again, you can apply this to every business, right?
Yeah.
We can apply it to every business. In my business, we do the same thing. I'm constantly sending things to my clients that are like, look, yes, these are some of the things that I do, but if you want to do it better, if you want to take what I do and enhance it, these are ways that you can do it outside of that. So we call that here, we call it AUA, and unsolicited advice, but we're always giving it. We're always offering it. We're always saying, hey, we saw this running store open down the road and you do Pilates. Why don't you guys team up and let's do these things? So we're always given that extra thing to become their hero. We're the people that we got a call. We made a call last night to a client. We said, hey, we just noticed this thing that's happening in our neighborhood, and we think you should come out here and canvass the neighborhood and make sure that they know you can service this problem that every single person in our neighborhood's having. They're like, that's crazy that you would call us on a Sunday to tell us this. But yeah, it's what we're going to do. We're going to go that extra step.
Yeah, you've got to go above and beyond. I mean, in the world that we're living in right now, I mean, fee compression in our space is happening on a regular basis, and you'll hear me in a lot of the videos I talk about, and I'll say it on here right now. Product is not the unmet need in this industry, in our space especially. Mm-hmm. So if you're not going above and beyond and giving things of true value to your end user client, and you're really just trying to be transactional, well, that's all you'll get. And right, wrong, or different, you'll end up, in my space especially, you'll be pushed out, especially with what we've put together. I would absolutely hate to have to compete against what it is that we've developed here over the last 3 years. So, and it is about us going above and beyond. I mean, on a regular basis, it's not unusual for me to be up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to do things that help my advisors ultimately either look better or grow their practice. And that's all our laser focus has been on in the first place.
Right.
Most in my space, and to each their own, they really tend to push product because that's all that they have. I just set out to do these things differently, and it was to be laser focused on client acquisition for advisors, because I knew that if I could help them solve their client acquisition issues, which is the number one challenge in this space, I knew I would be rewarded with the business that I was ultimately going to monetize that relationship with. So I just sort of took a leap of faith and just decided that was how we were going to move forward. And it's worked beautifully as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, and I tell people that for us all the time. I say, we do social media, we do websites, we build all these things, but I don't think people stay with us. I don't think we didn't lose any clients over COVID. The reason we didn't lose clients, I really believe, has nothing to do with the product we're offering. It has everything to do with the fact that we called them immediately and said, for example, we're going to start a podcast, and the idea behind the podcast is to get you in front of more people. They're like, that's not part of your job, but it was part of what we did. Yeah. And they know it's the introductions we make. It's the ideas that we give them. It's all that extra stuff. That's why they stay. They can get the product almost anywhere, but they can't get that extra part.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So well, I say this regularly to my staff, and I say it to advisors. I'm like, we're in the relationship business. We're not in the product pushing business. We're in the relationship business. And if you can cultivate and know how to help somebody through this relationship building on things that you can provide, then it becomes a win-win for everybody. And that was what we set out to do, was to try to make this a win-win-win, mutually beneficial arrangement. And in fact, whenever I talk to anybody, and the reason why I created what we call the advisor partner platform is that I wanted everybody to understand we're partners in this. We're helping one another grow our respective firms or practices with and for one another. And if it's not mutually beneficial, if it's not a mutually beneficial arrangement, even if I am going to be the one that's going to benefit more, I won't even do it. I won't even acknowledge it, and I won't even entertain any possibility of doing something that's not mutually beneficial.
Right, and I think that's the way to go. It really is. So you've got to know, or go back to BNI. Maybe I should just make this a BNI podcast. I mention it so much, but go back to BNI and the idea of giver's gain. The more you give, the more you're going to receive. So if you can't give, something's wrong.
I love that I love that you just said that, because one of our most recent, very exciting relationships that we just started, he just introduced us, and we became a strategic partner and a vendor, if you will, for the 9th largest independent broker dealer in the United States. Because he learned about our process, and then he went to them and said, hey, you guys really need to take a look at this, because they're doing things differently than I've ever seen. And I've been in the business for 35 years. But during our last interview that we just did, sort of similar to this, he said, be a go-giver, not a go-getter.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
I love that. It's really great. It's perfect. All right. So let's talk about how to attract, acquire, and retain clients. What is the secret there?
Well, again, it sort of goes back to this foundational and fundamental approach that we've created, where we lead with helping to demystify, which is attracting for my independent advisors to go out and then acquire their clients through the educational platform that we've created on estate planning, being that foundational approach. So if we just break down the word just real fast, estate planning. Okay.
Right.
So typically that connotates for most, and we've learned this through a lot of our surveys that we've done, is that a lot of times end user clients, when they hear estate planning, they automatically hear or go to estate taxes. And if you think about it, especially in the tax brackets and in the change in the tax code that just happened this year, up until 2026 anyway, 99% of Americans don't have an estate tax problem. You have to be worth 11 million or 23 million, around there for couples, individuals 11 and a half, 23 million for married couples to even have an estate tax problem. Well, guess what? Most people don't fall into those categories. So but whenever you have the issue on the front end that people hear estate planning and they automatically go to estate taxes and they think, oh, that's just for millionaires and billionaires. That's not for me. Right. What we do is we bring to market this educational platform that helps to attract and on the front end. And then when we take them through what we call our client interview process, it's a 60-minute complimentary consultation. Once they've learned our event, it takes about an hour just to listen to it. It's a free complimentary event in the first place to go to, all online, on demand, whenever you want to. And then ultimately, whenever you take them through this process, these end user clients, after they've learned on the front end about what estate planning really is, and when I break down those words, here's what you get. An estate is just everything you own. The plan is what we put together for distribution when you're gone. That's what an estate plan really is in its simplest form. But right. What ends up happening is that, and I forewarn my my advisor partners, I say, careful what you wish for, because if done properly, when you retain these clients, you're retaining them in perpetuity. So you might want to make sure that since you have this challenge of acquiring clients on the front end, and you're like, hey, I'll talk to anybody, you might want to make sure that they're actually the clients that you do want to work with 10, 15, 20, 30 years maybe down the road, because if done properly, they're your clients in perpetuity. So that's what I talk about, retaining clients. And really, we even take it one step further. If done properly, we even help with the generational control, where the dollars typically are inherited outright. We call it outright distribution. Well, we put up a distribution plan on the front end that really helps beneficiaries in a way that can protect them, as well as, even though it sounds great that I got $1 million from mom and dad, it may not be necessarily the best thing, because we have a better way to do that. You're still going to get your million or even more in a lot of situations, but we even take it this other step further on not only retaining clients, but also generationally controlling that distribution into the future as well.
That's great. So I want to talk about, you just said, acquiring. The thing is, if you acquire them, you've got them, but do you have them and you're happy with them, or are you stuck with them? So you have to establish control over the client relationship. Yep. Talk a little bit about why that's so important and how you really do it.
Well, here's the thing, what it really boils down to, and that's a great question. we have what we call a fit agenda. So before we even decide that we're going to engage with one another, we want to find out that we're actually a good fit for one another. And again, that's just part of the process that a lot of our advisors learn how to do. And you know what? It's okay that we may not be a good fit for one another because there's lots of choices and lots of options out there. And in fact, we have a lot of advisors who, if they really understand what this process is about, and the enlightened advisors do understand what I'm getting ready to say, they know that they have a lot more choices, truth be told, than the end user client out there, because not everybody's doing what it is that our platform provides for. So really knowing and understanding one another, I think is a win-win, and that's what you're really looking for. But the fit agenda really is helping to communicate on the front end, managing expectations, and getting the advisors that I work with to educate those clients and enlighten them on, I'm looking for you to buy into something, not buy something. And that's really, at the end of the day, what it is that total client engagement, as I call it. That's what you're really trying to be, have this control over the client relationship. If they buy into what it is that you do, well, you don't have to worry about selling a product ever, because they've already bought into your process. So again, every one of our independent advisors, they take them through this proprietary process that we even take them to the level where we name what the process is. So ultimately what ends up happening, these client introductions, they go out where they're compelled to tell their either family, friends, those they're closest to be like, hey, look, I just got to tell you something. ABC advisor, right? Mr. Advisor, whatever you want to call it here. They have this proprietary process that takes all the pieces of my puzzle and they put them all together, and they call this process X, whatever that name of that process may be, because we help to name it. A lot of times they'll use our own individual process called the DASH formula. And there's a whole conversation we can go on into that, but this is really what it's all about. It's helping to get the clients to engage with you, to buy into what it is that you're doing. And then from there, you don't have to worry about selling them anything, because they've already fully bought in to what it is that you're doing. And that's done on the front end, managing expectations, once you take them through this client intake interview.
Absolutely. And I want to say that, we as entrepreneurs, we come in, especially in the beginning, we come in and it's stressful. You've got to bring in clients. You've got to keep them. You've got to make them happy. And it's very, very stressful. And there's once in a while you get a client who doesn't fit. And your natural inclination is to say, oh, yeah, we can work together. And your natural inclination is to keep trying to sell them and to keep trying to sell them. And you realize, even in the relationship, even after they've signed, you're constantly trying to prove that you're good enough. And that's so bad for an entrepreneur. And it's so bad for the client. And if you can just let them go, which sounds counterintuitive, but it always works out.
Well, we call that addition by subtraction sometimes, because the one thing that none of us are getting more of is time. This is it. 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year, not counting leap year. So that's really, at the end of the day, you've got to have the right amount of time, and you want to work with the right type of clients. And I've seen this time and time again. A lot of the agents, producers, advisors that I've worked with in my 20 years, because client acquisition has been such a challenge, they are willing to talk with or work with anybody. I tell them, look, I've solved the client acquisition model. I've solved the traditional challenges that normally you have. So it's okay to be a little bit more selective. Take them through the fit agenda. Honestly, a shout out to Duncan McPherson, because I learned a lot of these things just listening to the things that he's put together with training advisors on the things I'm talking about right now. And he's got this company, the Pareto system, and Pareto is really this 80-20 rule. You get 80% of your production from 20% of your clientele. So it really is important to help and understand, get advisors on the front end to buy into what it is we're talking about. And then that trickles down to where these end user clients that our advisors work with now have learned how to buy into what it is that they're selling. And really what they're selling is a process. And And some of the things that they do early on may not be something we're going to do right now, or it may be years in the future, maybe something we're already past. But we take all these things into consideration when doing all of the planning that really helps to differentiate and create that professional contrast that I'm talking about in the sea of lookalikes. Because there's plenty of advisors to go around that are out there. And you talked about BNI again. Well, BNI is chock full of advisors who are trying to get into BNI, and they're like, oh, sorry, we've already got a financial advisor in this.
Right.
We don't need any more. You know why? Because they're all the same, quote unquote. We really help to differentiate them.
Right. Well, and that's what you've got to do, because any networking event other than a BNI, you go in, there's one advisor, but any other networking event you go to, there are 15 advisors at every single one of them. It's crazy. So you do have to stand out. And we didn't put that as one of our things, but it is so important that you know why it is that you stand out, and sometimes it's the thing that you think is the negative about you. Right. Sometimes it's the thing that made me stand out, and it took me a long time to figure it out, is that I am completely authentic and I don't use words that people don't understand. And when I talk about digital marketing, I talk about it in a way that you're going to understand. And I thought, well, those other guys, man, they're using all those acronyms and they're doing this, and maybe I'm doing it wrong. And then I realized, no, it's what attracts people to us is that we are really down to earth. This is how it's done, and this is why we're doing it. Right.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. It really does.
Yeah. Well, what you just got through saying is one of the other things that we talk about on a regular basis is, data dumping and industry jargon. Your clients don't know industry jargon. They don't know what Rufata means. They don't know, what NAFA is. They don't know what RMD means. Those are industry terminologies that are used and thrown around regularly. And what ends up happening is that if you're trying to communicate to your end user and use an industry jargon that only you know about because you're in this space, a lot of times it's like, why do I know what you just said? And the confused mind almost always says no.
Right, exactly. Well, and if you make somebody feel dumb, that never wins. That never wins you friends.
Yeah, just to make yourself look smarter or feel smarter. Yeah, for sure. So you've definitely got to, and it's really easy for me. Now, I'm born and raised in Arkansas, so I'm a big fan of the keep it simple, stupid, mentality. Anyway, I mean, when I have conversations with my advisors, obviously we can data dump and industry jargon all day long, but it helps them to understand whenever I start talking with them on what it is that we do, that can help to differentiate them. It does get down to just simple conversations, easy to understand terminologies.
Right. And I think that is key to any industry.
Yes.
And actually, just so I'm going to go back and say this, from a point, I say it so often, in your digital marketing, in your website, in everything you do, it's important because people aren't looking up those keywords that you understand.
Yep.
They're looking up keywords they understand.
Yep.
What happens when I die?
Yes.
They might not look up estate planning, but what happens when I die, right?
Yes.
They want to know what happens to my money. So those are things you have to think about when you're doing your marketing in particular. All right. I am throwing this at you because we had some technical difficulties, so I didn't warn you, but do you have a couple of favorite books you want to tell us about?
Yeah, sure. So because time is of the essence, a lot of times it's book on tape or it's watching a movie, and hopefully the however they make that movie, hopefully it lines up with the book. But Napoleon Hill is a great author, and Think and Grow Rich is a phenomenal book. It's been more of watching some of that stuff. And then I'm a golfer by trade, if you will. So I actually moved up to Phoenix, Arizona 23 years ago to become a golf pro, which ultimately led me to the mentor that got me into this space, where I was his caddy at a private club in North Scottsdale. And then I caddied for him for 2.5 years before I even knew what he did, which is the space that I'm in now. And then I ended up ultimately working for him for over 10 years, and then decided to go out into the retail space. And then I ended up starting my own deal. But because I'm a golfer by trade, there's a book that I think does transcend, and it can be translatable into any industry. And it's Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And Dr. Bob Rotella is the person who wrote the book. And And the problem is, I think that we a lot of times get this paralysis by analysis, if you will, and trying to always be perfect and say the right thing and do the right thing, whatever it is, whatever they think the right thing might be. And the problem is, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to fail. It's okay to, in fact, I tell my son, who is an aspiring golf pro, he just played in a 2-day tournament this weekend. I said, fail every chance you get, because that just gets you closer to success. So that book, what it really encapsulates is that golf is not a game of perfect, because it can't be perfect. Life can't be perfect. And I have a quote that I use all the time: golf, just like life, can always be better, and it can always be worse. So just embrace it. So there's my couple of favorite books for you.
Well, and and that goes into everything, just so you know. I mean, I used to write a blog called Anne's Running Commentary. And it was about running. And it was about the fact that every time you go out for a run, especially if you're really trying to get better every time, it's really easy to not be satisfied. Right? It's really easy to go, well, I could have done that better. I could have done this better. I could have done, instead of saying, okay, yes, and next time maybe I will. But this was a pretty good run. This was a pretty good day. It could have been worse. It could have been better, but it's okay. So that was a great thing to say.
Well,
all right.
In my staff, just one last thing. In my staff, I tell them all the time, I go, done is better than perfect. We'll refine it along the way. Done is better than perfect.
Absolutely. They call me Send It here. I'm like, send it. It's good.
I love it.
All right. So tell me how people can find you. I've got your website up here, CSIFG.com. Are there other ways for them to find you?
Yeah, you can absolutely. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter. The Twitter handle is a little different. It's CSI Financial GRP is the Twitter handle. But you can find us CSI Financial Group business page on Facebook. You can find us on business page on Instagram, LinkedIn. Obviously, you can connect with me on all of those as well. It's pretty simple. It's my first name, last name at Carter Wilcoxson on all those different platforms. You can go to csifg.com / advisor solutions if you really want to find out the different ways that we can help you grow your practice. And we've got on-demand videos on there as well that you can be able to learn more. You don't even have to pick up the phone. You can also email us, our team, info@csifg.com as well. And that's probably the best ways to be able to get a hold of us. Or you can always pick up the phone, call our 800 number, 888-316-6040.
That's awesome. And I love that, because what you just did there, I want to remind people of this. What you just did there is give them multiple ways, because so often people want to give you one way, or they want to say, oh, you can call me, and they don't give you the phone number, right? So you need to make it easy. Put it out there how people can reach you. Put it out there how they can find you. So that is something that's so important. I thank you for doing that. All right. I want to talk about who we have coming up. You stay right here. Tomorrow we have Wednesday we have Felicia Barlow-Clark. She's going to talk about finding a niche market, and she's got a really niche market. She works with people on celebrating a life when someone passes, and it's an unusual market, but it's something that she has really embraced and she's really good at. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I want to remind you to subscribe. If you're listening to this on a podcast right now, you can subscribe wherever you're listening to it, and that will help us out. We're getting close to 1,000 views on these videos right now, which is making us very happy. But and on the podcast, actually, we're way over 1,000 views, but we're 1,000 listeners on the podcast. So please do keep subscribing. We need more people there. And I want to remind you, you can subscribe on YouTube, and my kids will stop thinking I'm such a nerd. So go over there and subscribe on YouTube so I can get 1,000 subscribers there, and then I can start looking at monetizing that account, which will make my kids happy. So make my kids happy, subscribe. I want to thank you, Carter, for coming on. It was really awesome, and it was not boring at all, even though you are a financial advisor.
Well, I guess the difference was I'm an advisor to advisors, as opposed to just, data dumping and industry jargon you to death, which is why it can be boring for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that's it, is that it's nice for people to see we all have lessons, right? We all have lessons that we've learned that we can help other entrepreneurs do, which is what this show is all about. So we really appreciate you coming on. All right, guys, I will see you Wednesday. There may be a surprise show tomorrow. We're waiting for confirmation on that. And then we're Wednesday and Friday. So there may even be 4 shows this week, which is a busy week for us. But thank you again, Carter, for coming on. We'll see everybody else Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.